So I realize that this is like a week or two old at this point, but I wanted to make a point about Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider #1, this one shot from the Damnation story. Diversity in Comics covered this. A guy named Hydra Hut covered this, who goes by the name Norrin Rad on Twitter. And I just wanted to make a point about something. This video may not be very long. Diversity in Comics really, really liked this, and it kind of surprised me that he liked this, because I was just annoyed the entire time while I was reading it. The writer is Christopher Sabella, who is sort of known to be... He's known to be one of these far-left guys. He's done some antagonistic things towards us, towards Diversity in Comics, towards... He seems to be one of these people that's big into sort of enforcing the cliquish nature of Comics Pros. The artist is Phil Noto. I don't know what else Phil Noto has done, but I know he's no scrub. I know he's been around a while. This whole issue, the idea is that during Damnation, which I'm not reading, I don't know what happened, somehow Mephisto was able to kill Johnny Blaze, which I didn't think was really possible. I thought that the Ghost Rider kind of prevented that from happening, but he kills Johnny Blaze, and Johnny Blaze gets sent to hell. And for reasons that are not entirely clear, Johnny and the Ghost Rider split up. And while they're in hell, it turns out that this is all part of the plan. It turns out that what Johnny Blaze's actual plan is to go to the very center of hell and take over Mephisto's throne and be king of hell. Then he can really mess with Mephisto and really help whatever Doctor Strange is trying to do, which I don't really know what he's trying to do because I'm not reading it, but it's still weird. So there's two big problems that I've got with this, and one is the art. One thing that I didn't like about that Spirits of Vengeance mini from a few months ago is that the artist David Baldeon, he made, like, he would have cool panels, but certain things would just be really weird. And one of the things I really didn't like was that he tended to make Ghost Rider look small, which you see in panels like this. So Phil Noto is continuing that vein. And the thing about Ghost Rider is that, I mean, yes, he's the size of a normal man, you know, he's maybe 6 feet tall, but he has this really powerful presence to him, where he's just supposed to be overwhelming. He's supposed to be, you know, the spirit of vengeance. He's supposed to be the manifestation of sort of all of your natural fears that people have of being held accountable for their sins. And one thing I couldn't help but compare it to was this series here. This issue here is kind of special. This is one of the very first single comic book issues that I ever picked up. This is Daniel Way and Mark Texiera, and I actually picked this up at a 7-Eleven, of all things. Yeah, from October of 2006, so I was 16 at the time. I didn't know at the time what the background in this series was. The idea was that the last big writer on Ghost Rider had been and that book had ended with Johnny Blaze going to hell and basically staying there. I also didn't know who Mark Texiera was. Mark Texiera was the artist on Ghost Rider back in the early 90s with Danny Ketch. So I didn't know a lot about what was going on at the time. So this issue here, like I said, kind of personally special, but it also proves a point. Now, I'm not going to show this issue because this issue isn't as germane, but the first issue of the same series is sort of germane to what we're talking about, because the idea here is that this one picks off where the Garth Ennis series left off, which is Johnny Blaze being in hell. So for years and years and years, this was my conception of what Ghost Rider, how he's supposed to be portrayed. And you can see just how much better the art is in the Mark Texiera series from over 10 years ago than this modern day Marvel stuff is now. Ghost Rider looks really cool. He looks really dramatic. It's lots of big, over-the-top body language. I'm trying to find a splash page in this book to compare it to, and I'm realizing now that there are no splash pages in this modern one. So I can't even get a fair comparison, because even though this is like a special thing, this is a a $4 one-shot, and this was just issue 1 of this series. It was $3. And it's like the writer is Daniel Way, who he was newer back then. He wasn't known as being as bland back then as he is now. But I just look at how much cooler Ghost Rider looks, how much more menacing he looks. It is kind of cool that they have him in the old stuntman uniform, because this is Ghost Rider's original look. Although I don't know why the Rider would specifically look like that. And why Johnny Blaze would have the jacket and jeans. You'd figure it'd be the other way around, but it's still, I mean, you can see just like here, this looks like just the way that he's made, just the way that the skull looks, the way that the jacket looks, the way that everything about him looks so much more menacing than this guy. And here, once again, they're both in hell in this stage, but this hell feels a lot more like hell, because here they're treating hell like it's a prison, and it's like, yeah, hell is kind of a prison, but Ghost Rider is, and this is the other thing that annoys me, is just the dialogue. Johnny and the Rider are split up, and the Rider just comes off as, I don't know, not terribly intelligent. Ghost Rider has one of the most complicated backstories that you will ever see. If you read like the Wikipedia or the Marvel Wiki page on Ghost Rider, it is incredibly complicated. Like, you'd figure that something that's this conceptually simple would not be hard to come up with a backstory for. But the actual mechanics of how the Rider works are so weird. Like, I think the Rider is this ancient being, and I don't know if he's a demon or a fallen angel, but this really old being that Mephisto had a beef with named Zarathos. I don't know if Zarathos was the original, like, god spirit of vengeance that just became too overzealous and had to get sent to hell. It gets really weird, but the main thing that I kept coming back to is, why would the Rider care about punishing souls in hell? I mean, at that point, you can't, it's literally impossible to suffer more. And it says he's a soul eater, which I've never heard that before. There's a lot of lore, there's a lot of backstory, there's a lot of weird issues of Ghost Rider, so it may have been mentioned at some point. At one point, Johnny Blaze does mention in the series that he's been to hell before, and he's referencing this part here. And I don't even know why the Rider and Johnny are separated. Here, they're not separated. It's always Johnny in control. Oh my gosh, look at that. Bam. And here, hell it feels more like how you'd expect hell to feel. I mean, some of this stuff is just rule of cool. Like, there's this Mad Max inspired scene right here where they're driving these hell cars through, but this is more what you'd consider hell to look like. And the little dude here even mentions that that's not accidental, that the devil intentionally made hell to look exactly like people would expect it to look. And just the fact that the Rider, throughout this whole thing, he's obsessed with punishing the guilty, but you can't punish the guilty when you're in hell. They're already being punished. Yeah, I just could not. I mean, people say that, like, when people say that, older Marvel was better, this is literally all you have to do, is you just literally have to show pages side by side of that being the case. I mean, look at that. This is what John Malin was talking about how modern comics, there's so many, there's more panels that somehow convey less story. I mean, this is, this issue here, the modern one, it is a complete story. It does have a beginning, middle, and end, but there's this stuff 10 years later. I recognize all this stuff. This stuff still sticks with me, but I can't imagine that this kind of stuff here sticks with me. I don't think it's an art problem. I've said this before. I'm not really I don't know much about art, so I don't really criticize it much because I can't intelligently criticize what's right or wrong about a piece of art, right? It's like, oh, this is cool, this is not as cool. I can't tell you why. I can't really go into detail, but I don't really know if this is the problem with the art. I don't really see anything that's really technically wrong with this art. It's more like it's just the entire design of the comic that's the problem. Whereas here, it sort of lets everything breathe, and everything looks cool, and it just helps that Mark Teixeira, and actually, who did the breakdowns? Yeah, Mark Teixeira did the finishes, but Javier Saltares did the breakdowns. So you got two people doing art here, which, I don't know who Javier Saltares is, but whatever. Oh wow, Joe Caramagno, go figure. And you can see right here, look at the editor, Axel Alonso. He, when Diversity Comics talks about how Axel Alonso was a good editor, but not a good editor-in-chief, this is the kind of thing he's talking about. Because this kind of stuff is what became the norm under Axel Alonso's era as editor-in-chief. So it, and this is still, at least it's actually trying to do something. At least this issue, it's trying to be exciting, it's trying to be cool, it's trying to be interesting, whereas a lot of Marvel Comics, it really doesn't seem like they're even trying. But yeah, between the way that the writer himself is characterized, where he's just this really myopic, but oddly catty and petty spirit of vengeance, and between the fact that you have all these cool moments that just because of the way these pages are laid out, they just don't stick out at all. Why is this not a splash page right here? This thing where they pull the chain across the road and crash these cars. Why was that not a big splash page? It's a big moment. But no, you have to have more room for them bickering and this completely pointless panel here where you just show them riding, which we already knew that. So yeah, it just, is it completely fair to compare this to an older comic? No, but you want to talk about, so many modern Marvel writers and editors consider themselves progressive, but how is this progressive? How is we talk about women and minorities and people of color and stuff like that. Well, here it's not about that at all. It's just about the fact that this is just literally better than this is. And you can just, like I said, just showing, here's a not a terribly exciting page from this comic compared to what's supposed to be an exciting page with this comic, and this one looks way cooler and this one doesn't. And I can't tell you exactly why it looks cooler. I can't, I'm not really technically sound in all this stuff, but yeah, right here is the reason why so many people don't like Modern Marvel. This is, one of their arguably better issues that came out, at least the week that it came out, which was last week. And here is a comic. I'm not saying this wasn't a big deal when it came out. When you put Mark Teixeira back on Ghost Rider, that's something that should be a big deal, and it was. But this is one of their major events going on right now, and it's like, oh, you have all these cars crashing, and it's like, yeah, they crashed all right. And here you just have Ghost Rider standing here, and he looks really cool. So yeah, you want to talk about why Modern Marvel is so reviled, it has so many detractors. There's a good reason right there. So yeah, tell me what you think. Tell me what your experience is with Ghost Rider. Tell me if you are reading this Damnation series. Like, subscribe. In any case, this is Unranked Chevron signing off.